Awesome.
All right, welcome back to the Slide Podcast. So this one's a little different. I am Coach Aaron, and I am flying solo today, but I am joined with Chad Miller and Heather Keepers from the Louisville Hitting Science Center. How are you guys doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Heather, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Great. So obviously there's all this stuff going on with hitting and how to hit better, and there's a way to improve everything. So we wanted you guys on the show today to be able to talk about the cool technology that's out there, what to be aware of, what to know about as a parent, as a coach, and even as a player. And all those exciting, cool things that's coming down the road for baseball. So, but we wanted to start a little bit. So Chad and Heather, if you could tell us a little bit about yourselves, and for our audience out there who may not follow you guys on social media, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Well, I guess I'll start out. I started this out. I grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania. Played baseball collegiately at Cleveland State in Ohio. Then ended up going to Slippery Rock. I transferred over to Slippery Rock University in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. Had just an amazing experience there playing for Coach Jeff Messer, who just got inducted into the ABCA Hall of Fame this past year. And then he was the president of the ABCA in 2019. Then from there, went on to coach at a junior college called Penn State Beaver in Monaca, Pennsylvania. Okay. And then went on to coach at Marshall University, which was in the MAC at the time. And then now they're in Conference USA. But then left that to get into medical device sales. And then I also opened up a few sports performance businesses along the way. And then ultimately ended up with Heather's partnership, starting up the Louisville Slugger Hitting Science Center.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Heather, who are you? Did you just you just liked hitting and you're like, hey, let's do this?
Well, my two favorite things in life are animals and baseball and softball, and really in that order too. And so my previous life, I was actually I had a career in animal training.
I saw that.
Yeah. So but I did play fast pitch. I played at Grand Canyon University. I was fortunate enough to play fast pitch till I was 27 years old until I moved to Montana, and obviously the need for the opportunities for fast pitch for women is next to nothing, if not nothing out there. So right. I had to give it up. But it's always, baseball, everything has always been just, really big in my heart. And so I was changing scenery basically and trying to see what else I wanted to do in life. And about 3 years ago, Chad and I met through a mutual friend, and this was kind of a concept in his brain. And, we talked a lot about it, and, he would often springboard ideas off of me and see how it sounded. And we just kind of talked through things. And so eventually I started helping with some camps, and it just really grew from there. And so I made the complete career change, and shifted from 4-legged animals to 2-legged animals.
And a big scenery change too, from Montana back to Louisville. So
Yep.
Yeah. So Chad, she mentioned of starting with the concept. Obviously technology's changed a lot, but where did the core, how did the Hitting Science Center truly start? What was the goal and the mission?
Well, the mission was really inspired by my dad and Coach Messer. My dad was American Legion Baseball. He was in the American Legion Baseball Hall of Fame as a coach. He coached for 43 years. And it was pretty interesting. One of my weird businesses I actually own a professional wrestling company as well. And we had this really cool event down on 4th Street Live where we had about 12,000 fans. We had pyro and all kinds of craziness going on, and kids were yelling and screaming. And my dad was very blue collar. He had a sporting goods store, a hog and beef farm, and worked in a factory, and also refereed sports. And we're standing up there, and my mom and him were standing there. We're watching all these kids going nuts. And he looks at me and he goes, "This isn't crap." And I go, "What?" I'm like, "Look at this. There's 12,000 people here. There's 8,000 fans, or 8,000 of them are kids." And he's like, "This isn't what you're supposed to be doing." And I was like, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Is you're supposed to be back in baseball. You're supposed to be giving back to the sport that gave you everything that you have.
Right.
And it like kind of took me back. And then 2 weeks later, he passed away. And so it was kind of a big, heavy moment for me. And fortunately, unfortunately for Heather, but she's my best friend. And I came to her and I said, Heather, I'm like, what's this all about? And then I started really thinking about some stuff. And then ironically, in my sports performance business, I was in there working with a catcher one day from Marietta College, and he was just like skilleting balls. And I was like, who's your catching coach? And he was like, they work with us a little bit there, but they don't do a whole lot with us. And my passion is obviously hitting, but then catching is probably a close second. And I just got mad one weekend and I wrote an 85-page book on catching. And that's just kind of the psycho that I am.
Wow.
And so I sent it over to Heather to look at, and she was like, this is awesome. And I said, I think I'm supposed to be doing something with baseball again. She goes, you're absolutely right. You're supposed to be doing something. And so then fast forward about another 3 months, and Coach Messer was he was at the ABCA and he was giving his speech. So I drove up there just to meet with him. And then we went out afterwards and we were having dinner, and he looked at me and I need your help, Chad. And I was like, how do you need my help? I'm like, you're the president of the ABCA. And he goes, I have all these baseball guys that are trying to learn science. I have all these science guys that are trying to learn baseball. And the problem is we have 10.5 million people caught in between there called players. And he's like, I need you. He's like, I need you because you have 18 years of orthopedic and neurosurgery experience. But you also have years of being a college baseball coach. And he's like, you speak both languages very well, and we need a translator. And he's like, I need your help. So I spent the next 14 months, unfortunately, COVID hit, and I had some time on my hands to travel around, and I kind of didn't stop during the lockdown. So what I did is I just tried to travel to any company that would see me. So I ended up going to 24 different technology companies around around North America, and looking and researching all the different techniques and technologies. And one of the things that we really looked at was we need to make sure that the technology was scalable, number one, and number two is able to be mobile. Because one of the things that we want to really focus on is democratizing the technology and making sure that whether you're a little league in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or you're the Seattle Mariners, you have access to this technology.
Right.
And we want to make sure we're really creating a language that's uniform from the top down, from every major leaguer down to little leaguers and minor leaguers and T-ballers. And so that was what we really set out for. And again, I can't thank Heather enough for being patient with me to be along this ride with me, because she's been a huge sounding board for me, because I'm a meathead geek. That's a self-proclaimed meathead geek. And, and so I love science. I love working out. I love training, but sometimes I get a little too far ahead of myself. And what's so great about Heather is she speaks every type of language very, very well, whether it be talking to a little kid or talking to a major leaguer. I'm very fortunate, very blessed to have her on board, because now she translates everything we do so well. And so by combining her and combining the platform technology that we've created, we're now able to do and really live that vision. And last year we spent 41 weeks on the road. This year we're going to have we've got 100 camps and clinics scheduled throughout North America, and we've also now got some clinics scheduled forever in Taiwan. And I'm actually working on a concept as of this weekend forever in Macau, China. So we've got we're going international this year, which is really exciting. But the whole entire platform is called the Player Evolution Platform. And really what we did is we took all the techniques and all the technologies that we use in-house, and now we're able to scale that to every single Little League field for a very affordable price.
So what does that mean for the average parent? So I see, VR is huge. Obviously when reality is something that we see advertised now on TV a lot. Like, what's the difference? Is it same, similar? Like, what am I looking for?
So Wynn's a really cool technology, and I absolutely love and adore Dan and Chris O'Dowd. I think they're just great human beings. And in fact, early on, we were looking to partner with them to try to do some sort of a scientific bat fitting based upon the Oculus platform. We just couldn't get it done. The technology wasn't there yet. And so What we do is we're the number one facility in the country for utilizing ground force pressure and combining that with kinematic sequencing. And in layman's terms, and for the average parent, why that's important is that we're trying to get the absolute most out of your child that's playing. We want to make sure that we're able to look from a biomechanical perspective. How does a kid actually engage their ability to generate recoil and kinetic energy from the ground through the use of their own body? And so if you look at the way that a rifle fires and a projectile or bullet goes out the barrel, that's kinetic energy. And that recoil of that bullet going out the barrel and kicking back, that's the exact same type of energy that we get from our own self and from loading our glute properly. And so from a parent perspective, what we're really adamant about and what our niche is at, or niche, whatever you want to say that word,
right,
is to be able to, I said I'm a meathead geek. So is to be able to really, if we're going to go out and spend $500 on a bat, we want to make sure that's the right bat for our child.
exactly.
If it's a situation where we're spending $100 an hour for pitching lessons, is my son or daughter actually taking the time to utilize all the muscles we're supposed to be using in what we develop in the weight room? Or can we actually use our body appropriately to do that?
Right.
And so from an average parent perspective, what we've done is we've taken $1 million biomechanics lab. We've scaled it to $20,000 if you wanted to buy the system out completely. But if you just want to go to, let's say, a big box retailer, which I can't really name because we're in talks now with some of them, you go into their stores and it's a showcase every day at time you step inside of a sporting goods store.
Right.
That's really where we're heading and where we're going with the platform. But yet we're able to be we don't want to compete directly with baseball academies. Mm-hmm. We want to be the horsepower for them. We want to provide them a platform that they can, collect their data very efficiently and accurately. But most importantly, we're able to take and allow them to do scientific bat fittings within their own facilities, and then also make recommendations for not only retail products, but also player development plans, and then have the support and backing of world-class coaches. We've got, Dave Hansen on board, who oversees all of our offensive curriculum. Dave played 15 years in the major leagues. He's one of the top 3 pinch hitters in the history of Major League Baseball. And then he's also the Reds hitting coordinator, and he was Mike Trout's hitting coach at the Angels. And so that's who oversees our hitting curriculum. We've got Alan Thomas, who's the big league strength and conditioning coach for the Chicago White Sox. He's now overseeing all of our player development and performance planning. We partnered with the University of Rochester to oversee all of our nutritional plan. We now aligned with a genetics laboratory to now bring genetics-based nutrition and supplementation packages to the marketplace. We're now going into, we've partnered with Confluent Health that will now have a telehealth app available for all kids that have instant access to physical therapists and orthopedic surgeons in the event, God forbid, you need something.
Yeah.
So that's all going to be on our app that will be, with if you can open up an app, you have access to the healthcare providers. And that's something that kids have never had before. So all these things from a parent perspective, we're really trying to take a medically integrated approach and scientific approach that you have a one-stop shop by the greatest bat company in the history of the world, Louisville Slugger and Wilson Sporting Goods, that we're not just trying to sell you a bat, we're trying to sell you a career.
That's awesome. Like, it felt like, Heather, you're going to have to help me here, but it felt like I was in an episode of Big Bang Theory, and there was just a lot of physics talk, but no, I actually get it because I've done some research. Now, Heather, this is where I'm gonna challenge you, because Chad just went through a lot of stuff. Give me like the elevator pitch now for this for soccer mom, baseball travel mom
version.
Yeah, give me that.
Basically, what we do is we do a full biomechanical screening, and we identify each individual athlete based on who they are, what they were born with, what they've evolved into, whether it was, nurture versus nature. So there's an injury, your mechanics are going to change a little bit. That's just one example. You wear shoes that are too tight on you for too long, your feet are obviously going to grow a little bit differently. But
now, when you say scan, when you say we do a scan, so now again, I'm picturing this for the average person at home. Do you have a computer that scans your body?
We start with a foot scan, and it's a heat pressure mat. It looks like a carpeted yoga mat that you stand on. And it takes just a few seconds, and we get a foot scan. So we identify whether or not you're what's called varus or valgus, whether you're inverted or everted, naturally just standing without doing anything. And it allows us to identify how you naturally use your weight with the ground and how you use the ground, by just standing.
Yeah.
And then once we identify that, we do a full mobility screening as well. And so we can identify the athlete, from head to toe and their mobility. And then we also capture kinematic sequence with our Uplift Labs technology, which is a complete motion capture of the swing or pitch. And now we have a full identification of what who the athlete is and how to start.
Sure.
And so we could, at ground zero, identify your strengths and your weaknesses and figure out where we need to work, when we need to work on those things, and how we need to work on those things.
That's pretty awesome. So, I mean, what I'm hearing is we can look at your body type, how your body works, functions, and then build the best plan for you to get where you want to go. I mean,
and part of the reason why we've called our new platform the Player Evolution platform is because the one technology is always evolving, and as soon as you get established with one process, something new comes in and changes everything. And so we always want to have the best of everything so that we can give the best to our players and provide the best and most up-to-date, most state-of-the-art technologies and most accurate.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that too is that as players, we are always evolving. As coaches, we are always evolving to keep up with all of those things. And then, we hit a milestone as an athlete, now we're going to evolve into the next athlete so that we can get to the next level. And so, that play on words was very important to us because we didn't ever want to be done. We never want to be done with that, with growing and becoming better.
Well, because we're constantly learning something new about the body, how the body works and functions, and that's pretty crazy. So, Chad, what would be the age where you would recommend a parent truly starting this process and starting to ask questions?
10 years old, because just like a foreign language, the more evolved you can become and the more self-aware you are of your body, the more adjustments you can make. So for example, when we did a study on our square shoes that we designed. We saw a 5.1 mile per hour difference in exit velocity improvement in the major league population. We saw a 4.8 mile per hour jump in the college and elite level high school. And then once we got down into the youth levels, 13, 14, we saw about a 3.5 mile per hour difference. And then the theory that we saw was the reason why big leaguers were able to make such a huge spike dramatically is they are just so self-aware of their bodies and their biomechanics and being able to actually make an adjustment. And we talk about this a lot. And actually, we just had this conversation with Jim Tomey was, what's the difference between a single A player, a double A player, a triple A player, and a major leaguer? Every single person who's drafted by, professional organization has the physical tools and talents to play at the major league level. It's those who have the ability to make adjustment to actually make it to the major leagues.
Right.
And so, that's one of the things that if we could get to kids earlier and allow them to understand how to make adjustments and be self-aware, you're gonna flood the market with amazing athletes.
Yeah, I could, and prevent a lot of serious injuries. I mean, so many other things the more you educate. So I think it's awesome.
And he mentioned, he said 10 years old, but that doesn't mean that that's just, we don't even identify these things, or we refuse to look at it prior to that. It's just that's where you really start to see, kids really wanting to learn about it and having maybe the maturity to be able to. But that doesn't mean, just like he said with the language, it doesn't mean that you can't introduce it sooner, and just start educating on, because again, the quicker, the sooner they're exposed to it, the better off it is, and it's conditioned into them.
Do you ever see like the player's plan change significantly after a growth spurt and, that kind of change in maturity?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, like, for example, in the pro population, even with scientific bat fitting, one of the greatest things that Heather has taught me is really the seasonality of the sport and seasonality of the game and representing it. And so, for example, the best way of putting it is almost relating it to a bear. If you think about the seasons that a bear goes throughout the course of their year, they're hibernating, October through January. Then January they're waking up, they're going out in the spring, and then the summertime they're out kind of roaming around. And so if you think about it, baseball players and softball players are very much the same way. If we think about it, October 15 to November 15, you're in recovery phase. You have beaten your body up all year long, so you're just trying to recover all those micro tears and bangs, bumps and bruises that you've incurred over the course of the season.
Right.
And then November 15 to really February 15, if you're on a pro schedule, you're getting bigger, faster, stronger. Right. And then February 15 through really April 15 for opening day, you're trying to get timing, tempo, cadence, and really figuring out, where is my heat map at? Where, I need to get my reps in, I need to get my repetitions, I need to get my muscle memory going. And then April 15, then all the way through until October 15, you're in game mode. You're you've done everything you can to prepare for the test. There's no more studying. It's all about execution. It's all about understanding your body. It's all about, how do I maintain my strength that I achieved through the previous cycle of the year to get to that next level. And so really understanding that, and understanding that throughout the course of even the season, your skill sets are going to change exponentially. And so I think that that's something that as players, we need to understand that. And especially from the parent perspective, parents need to understand that bat models are going to change, equipment's going to change based upon players' workload and workload management.
Gotcha. Well, so first, I hibernate too. So as soon as it gets cold, I'm in hibernation mode. And so I'll have to say I'm there. What's your opinion and take on playing baseball year round? So we see travel ball now. Honestly, they may have, there's some leagues that are still, I don't think ever stopped. But for those kids and the parents that feel like, look, we're going to play in the spring's over. Now, if we don't play summer ball, fall ball, we're going to get behind. What's your mentality around that? Because, there's some people that say play multiple sports, get your body used to, those motions, building a complete athlete. But then you have some that say, hey, we need that. You need that constant work throughout the year in order to keep your body in the right shape.
So the way I see it, I think that answer is a more complicated one. And I think the younger the athlete, the more I would support, being a multi-sport athlete. One of the most important things in order to stay in this game and get to each next level all the way to the top is to stay loving the game. Mm-hmm. And if you burn out by the time you're 14, you're not going to love the game anymore. And it's very rare that you don't see that. And so I'm a big proponent of multi-sport athletes. I think there's so much to gain in the different sports, whether they're team or individual. And as you get older, and you're going to that next level, you're starting to think about college. I do think it's important to kind of hone it in and see what's really important to you as an individual, and not what's important to your parent, to your coaches, to your siblings, but what's important to you.
Right.
And follow that. And as you get older, as you start to really prioritize, then I would absolutely recommend, having that year-round approach. But as he mentioned before, the seasonality of the game, having a different approach based on the different seasons.
Sure.
And an intentional approach to those seasons. So I'm sure you have more to say on that. But initially, that's my response to that. I didn't start playing softball until I was 14 years old, and I grew up in Arizona where we get to play year round.
Right.
And it was the only thing I wanted to do year round. I mean, I was a swimmer and I gave up swimming because I just wanted to play every day of my life. I never burned out, but I played with girls who at 14, 15, 16, they were really, really good, but they hated it so much because they had been year round their entire lives, and they would quit. And it broke my heart because I couldn't imagine being that good and wanting to quit. You know, but it happens. And I think a lot of that is because they played year round when they were too young.
Right. I have to say, yeah. Go ahead, Chad.
I mean, I'm the same opinion that Heather is. We're very much in alignment with that, because I grew up doing everything from, you know, high school rodeo to, you know, not really high school, but, you know, high school rodeo and football and basketball and baseball up until ninth grade. And then in ninth grade, I had to start making some decisions because I found I was a pretty good baseball player. And so I started making the things, and, you know, like we work a lot with Alex Smith, the center fielder for the Diamondbacks, and, you know, or I'm sorry, Alec Thomas. Sorry about that. Alec Thomas and Alex Smith. I'm thinking the quarterback from the Chiefs.
Yeah, I was like,
Alec
wow,
Thomas,
he switched.
Yeah, Alec Thomas, the center fielder for the Diamondbacks. His dad's gonna kill me, but yes. So Alex a great guy, and so the thing is that he played football all the way through, and, you know, he almost, you know, he was drafted in the second round, and he's like, one of the greatest things that he did was he played football the whole time. And he said, because mentally that gave him a break from the field. And that's one of the things that we can't underestimate is mental health. And I think that if we're putting that type of pressure, especially on 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, you know, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
We need to, you know, kids need to be kids no matter what age and what they do. And so I think that's a very important thing. And then from a physical perspective, I do think there's a lot of overuse injuries, and especially, again, in that same age group, 10, 11, 12, 13, we've got growth plates that are still open. We've got soft tissue structures that aren't skeletally mature. The ability to go play other sports and become more well-rounded really, really impacts our ability to be successful at a later age.
Yeah, I've seen and I've heard some stories of, you know, young kids, too young to be getting Tommy John, but end up, you know, in a situation where they've already burnt out their arms by the time they're 18, 19 years old. And that's sad. I mean, I hear, you know, all these different tournaments. I'll have a director reach out and say, you'll never believe what happened this past weekend, and where we're overusing pitchers and ignoring pitching counts. And, you know, at the end of the day, we got to keep in mind it's for the kids. And like win, I promise, is not that important. Like, if you really truly care about that kid, you're going to want him to play for the next 10 years, not just for this game. So
I can tell you, when I was coaching college baseball, I never gave a 10-year-old a scholarship.
Well, and that's, and you're seeing more and more scholarships come in at an earlier age, but what does that really do? Because you're not putting the pen to the paper. So, like, what is it truly accomplishing?
It's more of a gratification and validation thing than anything, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, you know, we could go on for hours about this current state of college baseball and where everything's going. And it's, my hairline would recede even more, retreat every more than what it already is. But, you know, it's very interesting because we work with the number one 14-year, he's now 15-year-old right-handed pitcher in the country, a kid named Lincoln Boyle.
Okay.
And so Lincoln is an amazing athlete. He's 6'4.5", 215 pounds, throws 92 miles an hour was a 14-year-old, now a 15-year-old. Wow. His exit velo is 101, you know, and he's just she got on me one day because I was working with him and he was not acting the way he should have for what I thought he was. And I realized, and she's like, you realize he's 14. And I forgot because he looks like a 21-year-old. And so then it really hit home for me because I was like, these kids are kids. At the end of the day, like when I was 14, I'm riding my bicycle and chasing pigs around. I had, you know, like the last thing in my mind was to be thinking about where I was going to sign to play when I was 18 years old.
Right.
And so I think that's where a lot of parents get lost. They miss the forest for the trees, you know, because what I really think is happening, especially in baseball right now, is that everybody's going towards that college scholarship. The reality of the situation is 2% of all college or 2% of all high school baseball players play Division I. 2% of the Division I players get a chance to get drafted, and 2% of those kids actually step foot on a Major League Baseball field, which means there is a 0.0007% chance you will step foot on a Major League Baseball field. Does that mean I need to discourage kids from trying to chase their dreams? Absolutely not. But there's roughly 380 or 390 hitting jobs in the major leagues right now. And so if we look at that, there's 10.5 million baseball players in the world. It's a global game now. But if you look at it, how many other jobs that exist in the games of baseball and softball that people can make over $50,000 a year in? There's millions of jobs. And so I think that, to Heather's point, teaching the love of the game first and foremost is the most important thing we can do, is whether it be an influencer, coach, instructor, or what have you, or parent. The love of the game is what's going to ultimately take the kid to the next level as a baseball player.
Well, and if the rest of my team was on this call, we say this almost every single call, regardless who we got here. But, baseball is such a game that you're going to fail so much. And if you don't truly love that game, you can have all the talent in the world. And I think this is where parents sometimes get lost as well, is they can see all that talent in the world, but if they don't truly love it and can push right past that failure, it's going to be hard for them to want to continue on as well. So, and it's never getting a break from it too. That's a hard one as well.
Well, if you think about it, like we talked about, the whole entire situation of signing early and committing early, 90% of the coaches you're signing with as a 14-year-old will not be at that school by the time you're 18, you graduate. They're going to be off somewhere. The assistant coach will become a head coach. The head coach will get fired. You name the scenario and situation, it will happen. And so for me, these commitments that are early commitments aren't really worth the breath it takes to say I'm coming.
Right.
And the other thing is, they can't really verbally commit to the coach anyways, because the coach can't call them because of NCAA rules to begin with.
Right.
So it's just a facade. And what's happening too, especially with these big Power 5 schools, is the kids may or may not even make it to campus. So the coach is like, we got him wrapped up. He's good. We're done with our recruiting. And then if they commit 25 players, 8 of them will actually show up on campus.
Right. Well, and that's another thing too, is you see so many of these early, even in all the sports now in college, you see these quarterbacks that are committing at, 14 years old, 15. And like, there's so much that's going to happen over these next 3-4 years that I'm with you. I think they lock these kids down, or at least make them think they're locked down, and then hopefully things show up. So anyway, but that's a whole nother episode, and I know you guys don't have time for all that one. But so one of the things that you mentioned earlier that I think is super important, especially for the baseball player and the parents, is, all right, baseball season's about to start up. So what every single parent does is they go out, they buy cleats. They're going to see if the glove, actually, I hope they check to see if the glove fits right this season. And then generally they're going to buy them a new bat. Now, they're going to buy them an end-loaded bat. They may buy them a balanced bat. They may buy them an aluminum, a composite. Like, there's so many choices now. Like, what's the best way to tell parents, look, buy the right bat for your kid, and here's how?
So, one of the cool things about what we're doing with bat fitting is we will be able to scale this into large retail stores. And, I grew up living in a sporting goods store. Literally, that was, my mom and dad had a batting cage, and that was one of my jobs from the time I think I was 12 years old to the time to now I've made it into my profession, is that fitting a bat properly and appropriately is the most value-driven thing that you can do as a baseball parent and as a baseball player. And so, whenever I give you the brief history, obviously holding up the bat until your arm shakes for 5 seconds. If you did that, then it was good. And then we had other ones where if you hold the bat, if you put it in your armpit and it goes down to your knee, that's the right length.
Yeah.
It's like all these weird things that have absolutely no
rule of
bearing
thumbs
on what you're doing. Yeah, exactly. And so I think the biggest thing for parents is, number one, watching the kid actually swing the bat and making sure if they're dragging their hands, their kid is not an end-loaded bat. You know, it's like end-loaded has become the new badge of honor for every single player. Oh my God, I've got an end-loaded bat.
Oh no,
Well,
the dads love it more. My kid's got this end-loaded bat. It's going to hit bombs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Go right ahead.
Meanwhile, Billy's 5'1" and 45 pounds, and it's
struggling to get it around. Yeah,
exactly. And so understanding that a middle-loaded bat for him turns him into a stud versus an end-loaded bat, which turns him into a dud. You know, because you can't get that bat through.
There you go.
And so that's really understanding.
You got that trademark. I got to interrupt. You have that trademark.
Ricky Bobby Inc. No, I'm just kidding. So that's something that we want to be able to do. Really, is help parents understand, and understanding that if they're a lefty hitter and they're a right-hand dominant hitter or a right-hand thrower and lefty hitter, probably going to be more of a middle-loaded bat guy. If they're a left-handed or righty hitter and a lefty thrower, probably going to be more of a middle-loaded bat guy. However, if they're a left-handed thrower or left-handed hitter, especially at the little league age, you're probably going to be a little bit more middle in type focus guys. Then they're going to be an end-loaded person, and understanding that that's not a bad thing to be middle loaded, because now all of a sudden that kid can actually get the bat barrel through the zone, right, which they probably couldn't with an end loaded bat. So that's number one. Number two is grip. Understanding that grip has a lot to do. So we did a study on batting gloves. So we did pro hitter with a batting glove, Jack's batting gloves is a blister guard, batting gloves just straight up, and then just straight up no batting gloves. What do you think had the highest exit velocity?
No batting gloves.
No batting gloves, bingo. And so it's all about the surface area contact with the bat and the connection with the hands and kinetic energy transfer. A baseball bat is nothing more than a vehicle for kinetic energy transfer. Nothing more, nothing less. And so you have to understand, if my kid's bat barrel's dragging, then I need to take some weight out of the end of the bat.
Yep.
If my kid's getting his top hand through and that bat barrel's coming through and getting out and he's becoming a rotational hitter, and then we probably need to end load the bat. And so that's number one. But then understanding that the grip, if the grip is too thin, we're going to have translation into grip, where basically the bat, I look like I just stole your nose when I did that. So basically the bat grip is going to slide back in your hand if it's too thin. So having a thicker grip isn't a bad thing. And really lining up that grip with the bat barrel or bat handle with my middle knuckle and then my palm or crease. Okay, and understanding that's the sweet spot where I want to hold that bat. That's the strongest part of my hand. And so those are all things too that we want to really take in recognition. There's about 5 different points of a bat that we measure for an aluminum bat, whether or not what it's going to be, everything obviously, the material content, drop, weight, balance point, and then also grip and taper. And so those are all things that we factor in. And then from a wooden bat perspective, there's 9 different points on the bat that we're actually measuring in correlation with 41 different panels that we take in our study. And so what's so cool about that is we're able to dial those things in and truly get that fit. Now, to do that just from an eye test, again, the swing and the easiest way to form is get the kid on a tee, get the kid on some ball flight data, and then really looking and seeing what bat's going to work for best of them, and then recording it and seeing are their hands dragging through the zone, or are they able to get their hands through the zone? Because again, that's where that kinematic sequence really comes into play. And are they able to use their hips, their shoulders, and their hands in the appropriate sequence, and then be able to generate the kinetic energy transfer that they need to generate?
You know what? That was a lot, Heather, but I think I got all of it now.
It was just your nose part, wasn't it?
Well, a lot of that stuff starts to really make sense. I mean, now I would love to come hang out with you guys, and I had this dream, and this is another thing that I always say. I wanted to play in the MLB, but obviously that didn't work out, so I'm sitting right here. But I'd love to come and you just analyze my swing, because I think that'd be just cool. Critique.
Well, you learn a lot.
Yeah. Well, and then I think the biggest part about what I've learned from you guys is it's not about just telling you what we see, but it's also giving you a plan to improve. And I think if coaches always took that same approach, I see Billy can't really field the ball correctly at first, so we'll move him to the outfield. But if we actually help that kid develop his skills, he may not fall out of love with the game so quick. I mean, worry about helping and finding solutions versus just saying, yep, you're not good enough. So
Exactly. Agreed.
I could get on my soapbox all day with that one. So really quickly, and I don't want to keep you guys too long. Thank you guys again so much for being here. I got 2 questions left for you. So Chad, you mentioned this, kids hitting on a tee. All right. So I think you and I would agree hitting off the tee is one of the best exercises, practice routines you can have, is just constantly having tee work. MLB players do it, in the tunnels, underneath the fields, during the game, all that good stuff. But a kid really struggles to see where hitting off the tee is valuable. What would you say to that 8-year-old that thinks it's boring and why I should do it more?
Gamify it. So that's the most thing we play. So take you back to my days coaching at Penn State Beaver.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to do this. I had the opportunity to work with Jim Leland. Jim's kid he actually came to me, which was one of the most humbling things ever. He came to me and I gave baseball lessons to his son.
And now, was he smoking a cigarette when he was talking to you?
He was, absolutely. I have another story for another day. I was actually playing the Pennsylvania American Legion All-Star game whenever I was 15, and I sat, and Jim Leland was my favorite manager of all time. And I'm sitting at Three River Stadium, and it had this sign up said, "Do not smoke in front of the TV cameras." I'm like, who the hell would smoke in front of the TV cameras? And I sit down on the bench where he said, I'm like, I'm going to sit right where Jim Leland sat. And I sit down and I put my hand, and there's like this wee little space behind the dugout bench and the wall. And I put my hand right in the middle of a pile of cigarette butts.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my dear Lord, this is awesome. I actually stole one of the cigarette butts and put it in my bag.
Oh, that's classic. That's it right there. See, that's the kind of stuff that I do. People would be like, I'm weird. So
yeah. So anyway, going back to him, whenever I was coaching Penn State Beaver, I actually asked him this question because I was getting ready to do a camp. And I was like, how do I make the tee cool? And he said, well, you play a game called hockey, and you put the tee out, you put a folding chair out at about 15 feet. And then you start working on the tee, and you try to drive the ball into the tee every single time. So you put the tee on home plate, put the chair out at 15 feet, and you start driving the ball. And you try to hit it. And then you start making that a competition in the game. And he goes, the thing you're going to learn is that, the kids will learn how to finish through the baseball through that game. Because if you pull off to the left or right, if your barrel drags, you're gonna slice. I'm a left-handed hitter. You'll slice it to the shortstop side. If you pull or you roll over the ball, you're gonna hit the second base. But if you drive your hands and get your hands in a proper palm down position, you're gonna drive the ball right through the tee, right through the chair. And then he goes, as they get better and better and better, then you need to start basically backing that chair up. It was funny. Fast forward about 10 years later, I met David Eckstein at a camp that him and I were working at. David could literally stick a chair on top of second base and hit the ball consistently off the chair from home plate.
Wow.
And that's one of the reasons why he swears up and down that he had the best bat control in major leagues for over 10 years, because he played that game. And so from that perspective, if you're able to gamify it, and really, Lindsay Gardner actually worked with Heather and I this summer, and she was a really big proponent of hitting to targets.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of the things I really believe in, and because it allows you to have a focus and a purpose. And if you're doing that with a tee, you're understanding where you're in a position where you're going to hit balls. And from that perspective, that's one way of making hitting off a tee really fun.
I like it. I love it. Well, I guess I want some more of it. I like it. I'm sorry. See, there we go. Anyway, well, that's, I like that. You've seen the tees, of course, that's got the swivel arms at the top, so you can move the position of the ball around as well. Last season, I'm dealing with an 8U team. And so that's what I'm fighting, is how do I keep the tee fun? And so that's actually something really cool that we're definitely going to do this season. But like I would take the ball and I'd move the tee, and like I'd count and put the ball back down on the tee, move location, just so they're having to adjust swings to where the ball is. Because too many times young kids are just swinging and they just hoping they're hitting it. So anyway, awesome. So this has been amazing. So I think there's tons to learn here. If I'm a parent and I want you to recommend a bat for me, is there a way for me to do that without me being in Louisville?
Send us video. and then we can, especially aluminum bats are a lot easier for us to fit. We can actually do virtual bat fittings. And we have obviously be a charge, and just have them send it to us. We're happy to work with them. Now, the one thing we'll say is that all of our numbers are validated off Louisville Slugger products.
Sure.
So our recommendations will come out Louisville Slugger.
Gotcha. And what website am I going to? Like, how am I finding you?
www.sluggerscience.com, and then info@sluggerscience.com is the best way of catching us. Just emailing us directly.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Last question I got, and it's for both of you. It's the biggest question that we always ask all of our guests. And so if you've listened to the show before, you already know it. So Chad, I'm gonna let you go first, because Heather, I think she's gonna have a great one and finish us off. So you're walking up to bat. Chad, what's gonna be your walkout song?
Oh man. I've got adult version, non-edited, and edited. So with this being a youth podcast, we'll go with the edited. Let's see. The last time I walked up, I came out to Big E Smalls. That was my one.
Hypnotized.
What's that?
Was that Hypnotized?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But I would say now, as I grow and I get more mature, probably Johnny Cash, When a Man Comes to Town. I think that'd be a cool.
There you go. I agree. You don't see that outlaw kind of country show up much, and I think that brings a little swag when you're coming up to plate if you got Johnny Cash playing. So
no, absolutely. If you get hit, you definitely can't cry.
That's right. You better shake it off and hold it in till you get back to the clubhouse. So, all right, Heather, what you got?
All right. Well, when I played, it was pretty much anything Lincoln Park. It had a good start. That was my theme for everything I did.
Okay.
Nowadays, you might have to girlify it a little bit. Throw out Sia with Titans.
Sia with Titans?
Sia, SIA. Titans.
Okay. Well, see, now I will say probably the kids that are listening to this show will know who that is. I have no idea, but I'm going to look it up. So we're in the process of actually building a playlist on Spotify right now with all of the walkout songs that's been mentioned on the show. So music is a big passion of mine. I feel like music and baseball and rhyme and rhythm and beats, I feel like it all just makes sense. So anyway.
So Heather's walkout music for Tiger Show was Nickelback.
Which one?
Burning It Down.
Okay.
Or Burning It to the Ground, I think is what it was called, something like that. It was a really good intro.
Was that off their last album? I think that was.
I don't think it was their last. I don't know. I'm not really.
Yeah.
I don't really know Nickelback. It was just such a heavy go-getter intro that it was awesome.
I think I might go back to Katy Perry, Dark Horse.
Oh.
There you go. Or you could always do Wrecking Ball with Miley Cyrus.
I like that.
I mean, you could do that.
Downer. That's definitely a downer.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. If you guys ever need anything from us, please let us know. It's been awesome. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to come up and hang out with you guys sometime soon. And for all of our listeners out there, make sure you go look up these guys. Great information. And until then, I don't have Jen to say this, but we'll catch you on the slide.
All right. Thank you.